Great, thanks. Thanks for having me here and us here. So I'm delighted to be joined by Jeff Lungelhofer from Coinbase. Jeff and I first met when I was at Bank of New York Mellon, building out the custody business, and just interesting. I think it's been an interesting conversation around TradFi, DeFi, and how those worlds are kind of blending. So I'm curious, Jeff, when you first. I mean, obviously, we worked together a lot at the bank on the systems we were delivering there, but I'm sure Coinbase was a whole other level of DeFi security awareness. What surprised you most going from this TradFi world to the DeFi world in terms of security?
Yeah, really simple answer. The speed of development and the agility of development in DeFi is compared to TradFi. It's just there's no comparison, like none. If you think about it, there's some really good reasons for that. In the TradFi world, rolling out a major product update, like a huge product update for multi-platform impact, touching all of your customers, how long do you think that takes in the average, large bank? That's like multi-month. I'm being very generous there, like a really nimble bank. You're laughing, you're right. Multi-year, more realistically, kind of initiative. It takes a long time to roll something like that out. The number of code changes, relatively small. At a large institution, I sort of jokingly long for the days of like change windows. Like what a concept that is. Like there's no such thing as a change window in DeFi, right? It's everything is happening all the time. So it's I would say the pace of development and is just off the charts faster in DeFi, and that drives a different approach to risk. You can't operate the same way you would at a large bank, at a crypto company. If you did, that crypto company would literally be bankrupt in like 6 months. You'd be done. You couldn't compete.
So I'm sure this actually changes on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, but based on where you see things now, what are the three fastest growing attack surfaces in crypto? And how would you prioritize resource allocation against those threats? Yeah,
I'm going to start with two that are not sexy, but everyone needs to hear and think about. And they're both people. I'm going to start with people. One, insiders, inside companies, is a huge issue, right? So DPRK right now is coming after all of you, every company, constantly, all the time. It's really, really shocking the level of persistence and the creativity that folks will go to. And that is something that folks really, really need to be aware of. And we've already seen some pretty bad outcomes at a number of exchanges, specifically tied to that threat actor. The second thing is crypto is exploding. We're in a real limelight right now. We've got much more regulatory clarity. In the US at least. So we're seeing a lot of adoption and uptick, and I think this is a moment for stables and others to really drive the crypto economy into sort of the mainstream. We have to think about the consumer, the average user of crypto, who doesn't know anything about crypto. They think of a wallet as this thing that's in their back pocket with physical dollars in it. And yet we keep using this term as an industry. Get your crypto wallet out. I'm like, it's a lot easier to say than get your key manager software out, right? But that's what it is, and people don't know that. They don't understand it. So we've really got to educate customers on how to safely interact with crypto. If we can't do that, this whole thing's going to fall apart because we won't be able to sustain trust across the folks that are relying on it. And then the last thing is the DeFi ecosystem is driven by smart contracts. It's driven by L2, L3 blockchains that are driving efficiency against our L1s. The amount of application security and code security and pen testing and things like that you need to do for these smart contracts, for these on-chain functions is really, really important. And I think sometimes we roll these things out too quickly without really thinking about the adversarial use cases. So you see big protocol losses that, again, erode and undermine trust. So we have to watch that as an industry.
So people inside, your customers, which is kind of interesting, but it's more like, not that they're a threat, they're almost a threat to themselves, and then smart contracts. Very interesting. So I'm guessing your budget is a little smaller than at Bank of New York Mellon at Coinbase, or maybe a little different. How do you think about that in terms of, like, in some ways, there's so much that they're just such different attack vectors, but my mind feels like you would need more to protect Coinbase than you would Bank of New York Mellon, but I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah, I mean, look, the threat landscape is really quite different. There's plenty of overlap, but there's a fair amount of difference. But I will say that the ability to do more with less right now in cybersecurity is way better than it was, say, 5 years ago. And I left the bank in 3.5 years ago now. So even 3.5 years ago, you just couldn't use, for example, like agentic AI to contextualize log data or contextualize emails that you're scanning that are going out or uploads or this, that, the other. That wasn't even a thing, 5 years ago. I built a variety of security programs at BNY, and I think about the approaches that I took to build those capabilities are just dinosaurs at this point. They're no good. They wouldn't really function in the world today. And so, what I would say is that and this is what I tell my team: if we have data and if we aren't applying agentic AI against that data, we are failing as a company. Every single piece of data that we have come in, every single thing that we're monitoring, I want to see agentic AI on the org chart for every group. Otherwise, we are not going to be successful. So I think the ability to do more with less is far in excess what it was when we were at the bank. So it's not an apples to apples comparison.
That makes sense. So shifting a little to the wallet space. So another beloved metaphor in our industry is hot, cold, warm, and tepid. And I'm sure there's other metaphors as well. Lukewarm.
Yeah,
lukewarm.
warm?
Not
We
as
don't
sexy
know.
as tepid, but okay. So how do you approach this at Coinbase kind of philosophically? I know as a customer, there's, I believe, still that 48-hour lockup, but which is kind of this vault metaphor, but how do you think about
So you
hot,
can
warm,
have that,
cold?
and God bless you for using it. I
yeah.
love that. Not every customer does, but yeah. So the way we think about keys at Coinbase is pretty straightforward. We have our cold storage system, which is, we call it Core KMS. That's an MPC enabled. We use our own MPC implementation. We've open sourced those libraries. You can go download them and look. It's not the full implementation, but it is the underlying cryptographic libraries. We've open sourced those for everybody in the industry to use. But our cold storage is based on MPC, and those keys never coexist in one place ever. Even the shards never coexist. So the holistic key just simply doesn't exist. There is no key to go and steal. You can't do it. So we've built I can't get into too much details, but a very hardened system. We can talk about diodes and network diodes and things like that that allow us to have an incredibly high confidence that no single system, no single individuals, large groups of individuals even, could be compromised in order to impact our cold keys. So we feel very, very good about that. And by the way, we keep a very careful mix of cold and hot assets to make sure that we can always survive, even if we had a really, really bad day with our hot keys. And that's where things get a little more interesting on the hot side, right? So we do have to manage thousands and thousands of hot keys for customer deposits. We do sweep those into our omnibus wallets as quickly as possible so that we don't have a bunch of keys with assets sort of hanging out there and flapping. But that is probably one of the largest I would say concerns that we have is always looking at those hot keys, the systems that are processing them. We have some very, very tight controls around the AWS environments where those are managed, and obviously can't get into much more detail than that, but a lot of security energy goes into those keys.
So just, it occurs to me a little, because cold and maybe I'm old school, but cold in my mind is like key material stored offline. But you're saying in your context, cold is key material secured by MPC.
Right, but again, remember that MPC you can generate your keys completely offline, so that's all done, and they're never assembled. The question is, how do you rapidly automate transactions and be able to rapidly automate signatures? So we do have some ways where we can do that. Again, I can't get into details, but we use very tightly controlled network diodes and a variety of technologies to enable us to pretty quickly execute transactions involving our cold wallets that allow us to maintain the level of responsiveness that many of our institutional customers require. When you're hosting and custodying large volumes of VTF, you can't wait 2 days. Mm-hmm. You can't wait 3-4 hours to settle. You have to go much quicker than that. So but we feel very good about it, and I would say it's as every bit as cold as a binder or something like that.
Got it. So shifting a little, you mentioned North Korea, and I'm not sure where is North Korea fraud or security, but in different CISO teams, some teams approach those together separately. How do you think of, is your job divided between the two, or is how would you look at that?
Yeah, so we protect everyone. We want to protect the company, we want to protect our customers, and we view that as one mission. So there are a variety of teams that do that across Coinbase. So we have my organization, the information security. We have global intelligence, who works with our law enforcement partners globally and domestically in the US. We've got platform and product teams that build out our products, build the security features. What I will say is that we all work extremely closely together, so that as we're launching product features, as we're launching new security features for our customers, that we're able to do the right levels of assessment, the right levels of review of those to make sure that we aren't creating unnecessary attack surface. It's not perfect. Sometimes things happen. But generally speaking, we work very well together.
Yeah, I mean, as a customer as well, I've noticed the Coinbase techs have been reducing, which is good. But that must be...
Which ones are you talking about? The ones actually from us, or the ones that are from
the ones that aren't from you.
Oh, geez.
I think with the latest iOS update from Apple,
that was it.
It was
that
like
was
a
it.
godsend,
No,
right?
literally, that was it. We were going, my God, can we fix this? And we were
Yeah.
like going to Apple and being like, guys, you got to do something here. And they're like, just wait, it's coming.
It's
in
like
the next
a spam
iOS.
folder,
I'm like,
basically.
I can't wait. Like, it's happening. It's unbelievable. I got, by the way, just anecdotally, I would get probably 3 to 4 messages from people like, hey, is this legitimate? I don't even have a Coinbase account, from people, my friends. And I'm like, no, it's probably not legitimate then. Like people are like, oh, they know they stole my information. They know I have a Coinbase account. I said, no, they just know you have a number and it has these digits in it. They just guessed. Every human being on the earth basically gets phishes at this point. It's ridiculous. But iMessage was a primary offender for quite a while. It has gotten better recently.
Great. So, Coinbase, you're huge. You've got the resources. What advice would you give to smaller teams as they think about sort of the basic necessities of security?
Yeah, I mean, it would be two fundamental things. One, just be very careful about who you partner with and who you hire. Like, very careful. Like, do you talk to them on video? Did you have a really hard interview with them? Do you know what they look like? You really have to just really drill in. I'm very concerned about what's going to happen with deepfake technology, where you can get people who can change their appearance on video, things like that. So you really need to know who you're working with, not just who's your employee, but what partners, what open source projects you're working with. Like, you've got to know the people involved in that. We need to get sort of, I'm not saying everybody needs to go back to the office, because that's very unpopular in most circles, but you got to know who you're working with. You need to be able to look at them and recognize them and know how they speak and have a certain set of expectations about work product and things like that. So that's super important. The second thing is always bring an adversarial mindset to your product. So I tell folks that are launching new products at Coinbase. In fact, I just got off a call where we talked about this. It's like, oh, you're rolling a new feature. Awesome. Okay, you're the product directly responsible individual. Your product DRI. Cool. How would you break it? And if they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, we have a problem. Like, you know that product better than I will ever know it as a security professional. You know how to break it. Tell me how to break it. Have we accounted for that in the design of the product? Are we getting log data where we can produce alerts against those kinds of losses? That's the mentality that you have to have for every single thing that you build and every single thing that you roll out. That's so important, and it's really hard to train people on that. Like, go take the adversarial mindset, course. That doesn't really exist. Yeah. But I started my career as a pen tester, so breaking other people's toys is natural to me. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've done it. But that's the mentality you've got to bring, and I want every product manager and everybody who launches a DeFi protocol to think that way. That would help the industry tremendously.
That kind of plays into my follow-up question, which is people. You talked about insider threat. I'm sure it's not just insider threats who are nefarious actors. It's just bringing that culture of security to across everyone at Coinbase, and you basically answered that on the product side. But does it filter to other disciplines in the organization as well?
Every area. So we talked about product DRIs. I bang my head into the wall daily when marketing emails go out. Like, click here for your new product. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't do that. But it's hard. How do you communicate with customers? How do you get the word out there? It's always a challenge, and there's friction between we need to communicate openly and frequently with how we communicate, and you have to communicate with customers where they are. Right? It can't be like, oh, well, Jeff says we have to do it only through in-app pushes, so that's all we can do. Well, not everybody's running the app. Some folks are on the website, particularly folks that might be older, that aren't familiar with phones, and they're on the website. So we rely only on in-app messages. Well, we've just missed a potentially vulnerable constituent of our users. So, there's no simple answer. But really, when you think about an adversarial mindset, cut that across the entire company. Marketing, communications, every part of the organization needs to be aware that doesn't matter what your job description says, you're a member of the security team. Every single employee is a risk manager. Every single employee needs to think adversarial about, I'm going to say what to this customer? How are they going to interpret it? How could it be abused? These are very, very important concepts.
Yeah, so as you say that, it strikes me that both from a customer standpoint and also running the company standpoint, yes, Coinbase is a crypto company, and maybe the CISO would say this, but I wonder if the rest of the senior leadership would as well. Is it largely a security company? Like the product you're selling in so many ways is security by helping manage people's keys.
So yes, security is a critical part of the culture at Coinbase for sure. I would say it's a risk management company. And I think every crypto company, every DeFi protocol, heck, any company in the world really, you need to manage your risks. And that does not mean that you don't do everything security tells you not to do. Because like I said, if security ran the company, we'd probably be bankrupt in like 6 months. It'd be done, like the end of it. Like, and I know that. I'm not stupid. Like I know, like you can't do all the things that we want to do. So the question is, are you as a security team, are you making leadership aware of the risks? Are you making them cognizant of it so that they can make an informed trade between we have to grow this business with we need to implement these security controls over here? And sometimes those two are not aligned, right? And so my perspective is CISOs that sort of take the opinion of I'm a hammer and I run around and I hit people and tell them what they can and can't do. Like that is a loser's game. Like you can't do that. You will never win if you take that approach. I take a very, very different approach. It's like I'm going to inform you on what the risks are. You own this business. You are responsible for the P&L. Gains and losses are on you. If you decide to take that risk after I've informed you of what the potential ramifications are, if you make that decision, that's fine. I'm going to try and support you as best I can and protect you as best I can. But companies take risk. They all take risk. And in crypto, you have to take some risks, right? You're rolling new products. You're launching on chains that are untested. You're going to support assets that we don't know how those assets are governed on the back end, right? We don't know who controls the keys to that smart contract. Do we list it? Do we not? Oh, we didn't list it. We lost revenue. These are tensions that constantly exist. So you've got to lean in order to bring customers what they expect and what they want.
So in a future scenario where you go back to TradFi, and there's sort of a world where, I mean, let's face it,
they
right?
wouldn't have me back.
Yeah, I know. If they let you back. Right now, such a small amount of financial services activity happens on chain, right? Even though we all live in this industry, not such a small, but a small amount relative to TradFi. Do you see, as blockchains and crypto, and I'm in the Solana ecosystem, so there's this notion of NASDAQ on chain. What do you think that world looks like, sort of 5 years in the future, once we have much, much more activity, real financial activity on chain?
I think, I have to tell you, I think everything's going on chain. I really do believe that. I think equities are going to go on chain. I mean, they're already happening. It's already happening. But I think we're going to see more and more real world assets going on chain. And that is an inevitable evolution of our technology. I also think that there's a real opportunity there from a security and a compliance and a control perspective. I want to say I should have these stats right off the top of my head, but crypto ISAC did a paper a couple of months ago, like 0.14%. Justine's here. I think it's 0.14% of on-chain transactions are associated with like money laundering and fraud and things like that. I think that was the stat, right? What percentage of TradFi, like cash transactions, do you think are associated with money laundering and fraud or something like that? Like more than the market cap of crypto, okay? Like the entire market cap. And so why is that? People are like, oh, you hear this perspective a lot, like, oh, well, people do fraud in crypto because it's quote unquote easier. No, it's not. It's really difficult actually because every transaction is fully public. You can see it all happening. If you're trying to launder money or cook the books, you're much better doing that on a ledger running on SQL than you are on a blockchain. Like you're screwed. And the same thing is true of things like very controversial, and I am not suggesting that this happen. okay, just so we're clear. But like, imagine if voting was on chain, and you're like, oh, I think there was fraud. Cool. Well, go verify it. I can use like a ZK proof and go verify my vote. Yep, there it is. It counted. I can see it. And you could do all this analytics to see whether there was fraud and things like that. By the way, Coinbase is in no way endorsing taking elections on chain. I'm getting angry emails. My marketing people are calling me like, Lord, why did you say that? Twitter hates us. They hate this concept. So anyway, my point is, like, if you want to do something kind of under the table, don't do it on chain. Like, you're crazy to do it on chain. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to actually enhance the security and transparency of finances and make it more secure by taking it on chain.
Yeah, that's a really interesting and optimistic way to close, because while there are all these attack vectors that you have to manage against in running a blockchain company, there's also, the underlying hardness of the system that makes it less susceptible to fraud. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's fantastic. People always, I remember some of the common questions I get. It's like, why crypto? Who was it? Anyway, I won't get into the names. I'll get in trouble. But, crypto is great. Blockchain technology is incredibly inefficient by design. But it's totally secure. It's completely resilient. Where else can you go and publish a brand new, predictions market DApp or a new DEX, or something like that? And you can just go and do that on a globally resilient, highly secure network of computers, and you can do it for a couple $1,000s of Solana or ETH or whatever you're doing it on. Where else can you do? Like, how else would you do that today? Oh, I'd lease AWS. I'd be multi-zone. I'd have to get multi-cloud and GCP and Azure. Like, what a pain. Nobody wants to do that anymore. Blockchain is the way to do it.
Great closing. Thank you very much, Jeff.